You know, last week, some of you might remember last week I shared a movie that I just happened to watch the night before that I thought y'all might like. Did anybody watch Hector and the Search for Happiness? Did you watch it? Did you like it? It was a really cute movie, and I thought I'd talk about it a little bit today since I mentioned it at the end of my message last week, where a psychiatrist travels around the world asking people, are you happy? And if you are or aren't, what makes you happy and why are you not happy? And it really triggers people. I mean, some people get out a gun and actually try to shoot them for asking that question. Not everybody is as happy as you think. But the answers that he got surprised him when he learned on his journey. And of course, at the end of the movie, he ends up finding happiness himself. So today I thought we'd look at what makes us happy. And we're going to talk a little bit about what I learned from the movie, a little bit of my own insight, a little bit of other people's insights, and maybe at the class after the service with Susan and David, maybe there'll be time for you to share what your own happiness is, if there's time. That's up to the class. But the first thing we have to talk about is what's the difference between two words, joy and happiness, because they're often interchanged. But you see, joy is something that wells up inside you from spirit. It doesn't matter what's happening in the outer world. I mean, I have felt joy at moments in my life when I was experiencing the most suffering. So I know that joy comes from spirit. Happiness comes when everything out there is just the way I like it. That's when happiness comes from. You see the subtle difference between joy and happiness. Now, Scripture tells us, count it all joy. Talk about being triggered. Has anybody ever said that to you? Count it all joy. And you want to say, yeah, right, you know. But joy comes from spirit in spite of what's happening out there. And I think I shared one time when I knew or thought I was dying, I was told I was dying, and I had moments of pure joy, I think because I was so centered in every present moment during those times, that the joy just came up through that. Now, the mistake is when we think joy or happiness is a future goal. Oh, I'll be happy when? In the future, when I get this job or find this relationship or when I have more money or whatever. Joy is always in the now moment, never in the future, because we live in the now moment. So it's all in how we see life. You know, Michael did you have them on today? You have your rose-colored glasses on. Michael has a pair of rose-colored glasses. And whenever we go anywhere around town, people always stop him and comment on his rose-colored glasses, because I think most people want to see the world through rose-colored glasses. Right, Dawn? You know about rose-colored glasses, too. So I ask you today, do you look at the world through bleak-colored glasses, through fear and separation, especially the way the world is right now? Or do you try to look at the world through rose-colored glasses, which sometimes mean not watching the news, is the way I do that. Anyway, back to the movie. The psychiatrist found that people that were happy or not happy, it had nothing to do with whether or not they were having problems. He found somebody, and this one man had it all. Fame, fortune, everything. Everything money could buy, and he was miserable. And other people he saw out on the street that were homeless that seemed to find a sense of happiness. So it had nothing to do with whether or not there were problems, that it was a choice, not resisting whatever's before you, living fully in every present moment, and embracing it all, allowing the full range of emotions and feelings and experiences. The good, the bad, and the ugly, count it all joy. So some people still think that happiness is about power or money, but he didn't find that to be true. As a matter of fact, I once heard Lucille Ball say, and this saying has been credited to so many people, I don't know who said it first, but I have a memory of her saying it. She said, I've been rich and I've been poor, and rich is better. I'm not going to argue that with her at all. I find that money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you a lot of antidepressants. So, or a lot of chocolate, whatever your go-to is. I grew up not having a lot, but I never say we were poor because we always had enough to eat. But I do know it's hard to be happy if you're worried about your needs being met. And it brought to mind this week, this is Psychology 101, for those of you that remember that, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, remember that? That if you wanted to self-actualize, first you had to have all these needs met. How can we expect people to awaken if their needs aren't being met? And I would add happiness to the top as well as self-actualization. And the first ones he mentioned were food and shelter. Show me somebody who's starving or homeless, and it's harder for them. I'm not saying they can't be happy, but it makes it harder. And people have the need to feel safe. We in America are so privileged, especially white privilege. And the man in the movie found that, traveling around the world, that he was in countries that were run by bad people. The people weren't happy. You have to feel safe where you are. We found out what that's like the last few years, no matter what side of the political bench you're on. The rest of the hierarchy of needs were the feeling of love and being accepted, belonging. What did they call the television show in the bar? Everybody went there because that was where everybody knew your name. Isn't that why you come to church on Sunday? The sense of belonging. Everybody knows you and accepts you. And so the fourth one was self-esteem. Do you have worth? Do you feel valued? And then finally the fifth one was self-actualization, or happiness, at the top of the line. So when I was growing up, I was taught that you shouldn't ask for too much, that somehow being poor was a virtue. So I never asked for a lot, but I always prayed, God, throughout my life, if you'll just make sure all my needs are always met. I never want to have to worry about food or where to live. Just make sure all my needs are met. That'd be great. That's all I asked for. And sure enough, my life, I've always had my needs met. But then I came into metaphysics and thought, God, I could have set that bar a whole lot higher. I could be living the high life, but I only asked just so my needs are met. In my experience, though, when I look back on my life, the happiest times were when I may not have had a lot of money, but I was rich in friendships, very rich in friendships. For me, happiness is being around people that I love and that love and accept me just the way I am. And sometimes that means getting a cat or a dog, if you want that love and acceptance, right? Happiness comes when you feel truly alive. And when you know how to celebrate life. Anybody here love those moments? They call them lived moments. Think back of the times in your life, these lived moments when you felt really alive and you just wanted to grasp that moment and stay in it. There's an overworked statement that has been said so often it's lost its joy, but follow your bliss. Do what you love and the money will follow. And I always think of the old joke. It must have been Rodney Dangerfield. I don't know if it was, but it sounds like him. Where he said, my boss told me to have a good day, so I went home. Happiness is apparently finding a job you love. But I would add, when people go into their hobbies or their joy for their work, but then their joy becomes their work. And that doesn't always work either. Michael's dad chose to be an optometrist, even though he was really an artist. And he said, I don't want my work to be my joy. If I become an artist, then, I'll never have anything fun to do. This will now be my work. And he made many people happy through his art. But that wasn't his work. He had to find something to... It's like people who live in the most beautiful places in the country. I once lived for a short time in the Washington, Oregon part of the country, which is breathtakingly beautiful. And I used to ask these people, where do you go on vacation? And they all said Alaska. You had to keep finding, and I used to live in Sedona, which I thought was the most beautiful place. Nowhere to go on vacation. Where are we going to go on vacation? I don't know, we're here. So that isn't always the answer either. But I do know that you have to eliminate joy busters. Do you know what a joy buster is? Something that busts your joy. And it's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to stay away from toxic situations, toxic jobs, environments, or people that rob you of your joy. And to not, another joy buster is comparing yourself. Anybody here compare yourself to others? You know, you'll always find people that have more or do more, and you'll always find people that have less or do less. And similar is happiness is not attaching importance to what other people think, right? Altogether now, oops. How many of you care what other people think? You know, I didn't know, growing up, I didn't always have the approval of others because I always did things a little differently. But I was forced to learn at a very young age to be happy with who and what I am. I was forced into that. When you follow the path less traveled, you have to become strong in that. Well, one of the funniest lines in the movie was, because he made a list at the end of what happiness is. He said, sometimes happiness is not knowing the whole story. And I couldn't figure out what that meant at first, but then I realized early in the movie he met this woman that was making him happy, and he thought, wow, this is happiness. And then he found out she was a prostitute. And he said, happiness is not knowing the whole story. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. Again, don't watch the news. There are certain things that ignorance helps you to stay happy sometimes. Well, in the movie, closing it up, happiness is feeling useful to others, caring about the happiness of those you love, anywhere, anytime, being that presence of love to those around you. And sometimes when you don't feel happy, you have to create your own happiness. In my life, I've always gone to humor. The worse things get, the stupider my jokes becomes, but that's the only way I get through it. Now with Michael, it's music. If I can't find him, I know he's in his man cave upstairs, in his music room, listening to music. Being around friends, being out in nature. Have you ever walked through a mountaintop or walked along the ocean? There's nothing like it. Having a home in a garden of your own. I know there's many gardeners in here today. Does that make you happy? Yes. And finally, this is my last word. There are people that cause happiness wherever they go. And there are people that cause happiness when they go. You have to know the difference. Don't be that last person, okay? With that, I think we better go in and pray. Oh, prayer. Prayer can bring us happiness when we shut our eyes to the world of appearances. I'm not even going to look at appearances right now. I'm just going to go within and connect with the power of the presence. That feeling, that knowing, that thought of the one presence, one power that is moving in and through all of us, lifting us to a higher place. We release any resistance to the present moment. We simply allow it to be feeling fully whatever emotions we're feeling. We just allow it to be, counting it all joy. It's taking me somewhere higher, I just know it. And we relax into our life experience, allowing the flow to take us higher and higher through the bumps, through the rocks, through the curves. We go higher and higher. And once again, we are so grateful in each other's presence. And so it is. Amen.
Amen.